Welcome to this episode where we're going to be answering a question that I have been asked in the past regarding core strengthening exercises, because it is touted out there as a way of reducing lower back pain, but it doesn't necessarily reduce lower back pain, it does other things. So if we want to reduce lower back pain, why do we do core strength exercise? And it's a very good question, because I have said that in the past, that core strengthening exercise doesn't necessarily reduce lower back pain. So part one, we will start with what core strength exercise is there to do. And then what that will start to highlight is its role within lower back pain, because it does have its role. It just might not be the role that you think of. So when we go onto social media, whichever platform it may be, there are 3 exercises to do that will prevent your lower back pain, or whatever it may be. There will be something to that in that regard. Now, when we look at lower back pain, we have to understand that there are triggers to it. And it's these triggers that keep you in pain. So if we can understand these triggers, we can remove those triggers. That is what will reduce your pain. So core strengthening has its use, but if you don't remove the triggers, there's always going to be sort of that underlying undercurrent of pain that will be there. So core strengthening exercises are all about your ability and capacity to tolerate load. So load going through the torso, load going potentially onto the spine. Now that's more of a minimization of risk of it coming back in the future, and an ability and a margin of error is, I suppose, the other way to describe it. So it gives you a greater margin of error before it comes back, and it reduces its risk of coming back. There is no way of preventing it. There is no core that will be strong enough so it never has low back pain, because there are plenty of strong people that have strong muscles and potentially a strong core, and they still have lower back pain. It could be because a vertebra has fractured, which has happened due to exercise, because they load the spine so much. Vertebrae fracture, discs bulge and herniate, they irritate nerves, and then but they've got very strong muscles. That's documented in a book back here called Gift of Injury, where that happens to a powerlifter. So he's a powerlifter, you would expect strong core, strong muscles. If that logic is applied, he's strong. Why has he got lower back pain? Because when you have a strong core, you don't have lower back pain. That's what's generally touted. So for this part, it's all about the minimization of risk. Now, with that said, and again, this isn't necessarily a core strength, this is more a core stability, spine stability scenario. So if there is a micro movement in the spine, so there's some laxity in the disc and the segment, so the vertebra, the disc and the vertebra, which would be known as a segment. If there's a bit of laxity in the disc and there's a little micro movement between the vertebra because of the disc, the core muscles, if they are activating correctly, they will help stabilize that micro movement, because the micro movement can cause and trigger pain. And if the muscles activate properly, then that micro movement can be managed, and then the pain won't necessarily come out. But that's not core strength, because that doesn't depend on how strong your core is and your core muscles are. That depends on how well they fire and when they fire, and the balance of the muscular between left and right, front and back, depending on the micro movement. So what we have to understand is that core strength per se doesn't reduce lower back pain. It's more to do with ability to tolerate load and building a margin of error so it doesn't come back as quickly in the future.